Hello and welcome to the inaugural Industry Week of Learning virtual event. I appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to join us for the Industry Week of Learning. My name is Robert Schoenberger and I'm Editor-in-Chief of IndustryWeek, and we're very excited to have you join us here today and this week. We have a great lineup of sessions for you with industry experts providing insight on the ongoing electric vehicle revolution, digital manufacturing advances, and how to make friends and influence workers standing in the way of transformational projects. What really excites me about a lot of these sessions is that the focus is on manufacturing technology, but really more about what manufacturing technology means to people. This is always a people business, and the people doing the jobs are as important or more important than any machine or piece of software that we can pick up. And a lot of our speakers today really focused on the impact technology is having. This format is a great opportunity to ask questions of presenters and participate in the conversations. As sometimes happens in our busy world, if you miss any details from one session, or you're not available to attend a given session, or you just want to share a session with your colleagues, you will be able to access all the information shared during the Industry Week of Learning on demand after the event. The event will be available on demand for viewing for 6 months after the recordings. I would be remiss if I did not mention the supporters of the Industry Week of Learning. We would like to give a big thank you to our sponsors who made this event possible: UKG, the Business Acumen Institute, ScreenCloud, ServiceNow, and Dassault Systems. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. To begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please put your questions in the questions window and our technical experts will help you out. We recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. Additionally, we welcome your questions during today's event. We will answer as many questions as possible during Q&A sessions that will follow the main presentations, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time. To do so, simply type your questions into the question mark window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. At the end of the session, there is a screen that will pop up asking you to fill out a quick survey. Please make sure to take this survey, which will help provide us guidance for future events and content that we might want to provide. Thank you again for joining us for the Industry Week of Learning. Let's get started with this week of learning. So our first session is the keynote from our recent manufacturing and technology show, and this is a panel discussion on the future of electric vehicles with people from Lincoln Electric, General Motors, Ultium Cells, myself, and a few others. It's a great conversation about where the market is going.
So we're about a $20 billion a year revenue company. We're actually headquartered in Cleveland on the east side in Beechwood. I actually started my career at a tech center we used to have here in Willoughby Hills, which is no longer here, but it was a great place to start a career. We consider ourselves a power management company, whether it's electrical or mechanical power. We manage that power safely and effectively and efficiently across our different product lines and portfolios. The company is broken into kind of two pieces. There's the part we call our electrical sector. You can think of that as anything that's stationary. It could be as simple as a circuit breaker box in your home, all the way to an uninterruptible power supply system in a data center. So if we help deliver power from generation all the way to point of use, make sure it's safe and make sure it's done efficiently. And might have hit the button there, sorry. The other part is what we call the industrial sector. Primarily that's anything that moves. So we have an aerospace division, what we call our vehicle group, which is, I'd call it traditional part supply for cars and trucks and off-highway, and then our new e-mobility division, which is the one I run. We formed this division in 2018, so we're coming up on our 5th year anniversary. And we were already participating a little bit in the electric space, if you will, on EVs, but it was kind of haphazard. It was around the company. And we spent the better part of 2017 with a strategic initiative to form a division. And we pulled together elements from our traditional vehicle business as well as elements from that electrical sector and kind of took the best of both worlds and created this division. What do we make in the car? I won't get overly technical here, but we have kind of 4 key areas: power distribution and circuit protection. Those are a lot of things that either go into battery packs or around battery packs, making sure we manage short circuit events and anything similar to that well. E-powertrain, this is more mechanical. The gears in EVs are A little bit different than traditional gears. They have to spin at much higher speeds because of the electric motors run at higher speeds than traditional combustion engines do. Power electronics, this is any type of power conversion that happens, AC to DC power, DC to AC, or sometimes DC to DC. And then connectors. Connectors are very critical in an EV, and we just made an acquisition earlier this year that added that fourth quadrant. And then since this is a manufacturing conference, I just wanted to highlight in my last slide just a couple things. We do have a global footprint. Eaton's a global company, but for the EV space, we're focused really in China, Europe, and North America, where the bulk of EV activity is happening in our markets. Safety and quality, very important. Obviously, we have to meet our customers' safety expectations and quality expectations, as well as industry standards. In terms of growth, we are leveraging the footprint that Eaton brings, but we have to transform that footprint, whether that be engineering labs or manufacturing sites. And then from a talent perspective as well, we get this question a lot. We've got a combination of adapting people we have to a more EV-focused world, as well as because of the growth, we've been hiring a lot. So that's kind of how we've been managing these different areas of the company. And I look forward to the discussion today. Let's see.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm Kareem Main, again, the plant director at Ultium Cells. One fun fact is I've been there probably got there beginning of August. Every day is a new day, so if anybody's looking for a job opportunity with problem solving, jump right in. So it's a joint venture, as stated before, so combination between General Motors and LG Energy Solutions. I would tell you it's a unique challenge of trying to bring in two different companies, so there's different cultures there. And then LG is a Korean company. Obviously, General Motors is based here in United States. So that's a culture there, and we're trying to blend that all in and create one Ultium culture there. So that's been a fun, I'll describe it as a fun practice that we've gone through. So we're powering our path to zero emissions. So again, General Motors made the commitment that they wanted to be capable of making 1 million EV units by mid-decade. We are a huge part of that. So the Hummer that you're seeing out, the Lyric, your Celestiq, the Blazer, all of those units are supposed to have our batteries in them. So we're basically the Ultium technology, the battery cell. So I'd say in the Hummer, there's roughly over 500 battery cells in it. And then in a vehicle like the Lyric, there's over like 250. So it's a unique platform that we have. It's flexible, but a very important part of what we're going to do in the future on the General Motors side. Who's our customer. So at a glance, we have 3 facilities. Right now, we're the only one that can make any product. So the one that's in Lordstown, right on the border of Lordstown and Warren, it's literally right next door to where the Lordstown automotive plant is. There's another facility in Spring Hill, which is making a lot of good progress. They'll be up and running some sales next year. And then the site that is in Michigan broke ground a while ago. They're putting up beams, and they'll finalize construction probably toward the end of next year, going into 2024 and making sales as well. Be over 5,000 high-tech jobs, and there's over $7 billion invested just in those 3 sites alone, with the potential for a 4th. The Ohio operation, again, $2.3 billion investment. About $800 million of it was just in the structure of the facility, which is done. And we only have about 20% of our equipment actually installed right now. So we'll be installing and launching from now until roughly around November timeframe of next year when we get up to full capacity. It'll be well over 1,300 jobs as we're seeing now. And again, it's fairly large. When you walk in the facility, if you walk from one end to the other, it's like walking 5 football fields. So you definitely get your steps in for sure. And the equipment makes up the other 1.5 billion of it. It's really a lot of high-tech equipment in the facility. So that's what it looked like in April, and then that's what it looked like in August. So they really are putting these buildings up extremely fast, and that's with equipment in the building. And again, we have a plot of land next door to Lordstown, the old Lordstown vehicle plant, where we just have sea containers of equipment that we're installing as well. So it's a very busy time. We have roughly 900 employees there, and I would tell you that we have probably around 800 to 1,000 contractors on site every day. So a lot of focus on safety. With that, I think we have a quick video. I can show you some of the processes, and I'll pass it over.
It's kind of neat because I get to see the other side of your battery business. So we get the R&D room, or R&D batteries from that. But my name's Heather Soares. I'm from Cirba Solutions. I work in health and safety for them. We are a combination of battery solutions, retrieve technologies, and heritage recycling. We just came together this year. So Cirba Solutions is the name we picked for all of the companies. So leading the cross-chemistry battery life cycle sorry about that. So yeah, this is the 3 companies. We've now become Cirba Solutions, empowering an electric future to accelerate human progress. So we dismantle EV batteries at our facility. We also, in the Wixom facility in Michigan, and then we have other battery recycling facilities throughout the United States. So we do innovation for recycled cathode materials. It's a big thing we're working on right now. We're putting a lot of money into our company, trying to invest in other technologies for that. So we work with the OEM, the environmental services. We're trying to keep batteries out of landfills, e-mobility, automotive dealerships, other companies like that, government, municipalities, brokers. So we deal with all of those. And as you can see, we take batteries wherever you need that, wherever you are. We have several locations throughout the United States, and we also just acquired a new place near Phoenix, Arizona. So we're really growing as a company in the first year that we have been developed. Very exciting for us. So we're managing today, we're dealing with electric vehicle recycling, global logistics, so we're expanding a lot on that. Collection of batteries, advanced sorting, that is something we deal with. Disassembly, which is a major thing that we are working on in our facility. So I also do battery school, if anybody's interested. I do that, and I train that. So yeah, it's very exciting. We're very excited about what we're able to do, keep the batteries out of landfill, and hopefully work on the EV technology in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it, what I have. So sustainability is a major part of our company. That's what we're working on. That's what we're trying to achieve. And yeah, so that's all. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Steve Sumner. I'm with the Lincoln Electric Company. We've been here in Cleveland, Ohio since 1895. And it's really a great Cleveland story if you don't know anything about Lincoln. The lawyers make me show this. Don't trade Lincoln stock in anything that I have to say here. That's my get out of the jail free card. Yeah, so again, founded in 1895. We're the most studied business case at the Harvard Business School about Lincoln Electric here in Cleveland. Globally, we have 11,000 employees, 56 manufacturing sites, and selling in 160 countries. Our company is very diversified, but basically we are the largest welding company in the world. And most people don't even know who we are. When you say you're from Lincoln Electric, most people think you're a utility in Nebraska. But we are on the manufacturing side of the EV business by helping our customers make the vehicles. So the battery tray, which is the major structural component in an electric car, is made out of aluminum. It has to be watertight because if anything happened to the batteries, they can't leak, et cetera. So the bottom structure that you see there in the center column is a battery tray out of an electric vehicle. We make that, help the OEMs manufacture that with laser hybrid welding technology, so that it is completely watertight, if you will. So we've been participating in the EV industry for many, many years already, and we were just looking for how we keep participating in the industry. We have a culture of innovation. As Kareem said, if anybody's looking for a job, we are hiring. But some of the Lincoln firsts, we're the largest 3D printer of steel in the United States. So if anybody needs a casting replacement, we can print a steel part that is 10 feet high by 10 feet wide by 30 feet long and up to 10,000 pounds. And we make that part in about 7 days. So if you were looking for a casting that might take 18 months to get, you just send us the CAD file and we produce the part in about 7 days. We are a big power conversion company. So we were one of the first companies out there to have a 1,000 amp inverter. And all of our major customers like General Motors and whatnot also connect all of the welders to the cloud. So it's a digital architecture that already talks to the cloud so that you can do preventative maintenance, production monitoring, all of that. So we have all the internet side. And then we are used to manufacturing outdoor equipment. So most of our welders, literally, if you wanted to clean them out, you could hit them with a fire hose and then turn them back on again. So we've always been asking ourselves, how do we keep growing our business? The welding industry is interesting, and we're the world's largest at it, but we want to keep growing. So we looked at a number of ways. If you think about our company as a power conversion company, it just happens to be a welder today, but it could be anything. We looked at a number of different things. Uninterruptible power supplies, like Dave was talking about with Eaton, vapor deposition power supplies. It's the best silicon wafer growing power supply if you're into that kind of thing. Airport ground power, just other ways that we could use our knowledge and technology here from Cleveland. And so we said, well, let's build an EV charging business. So we took that 1,000 amp power supply and we turned it to be 1,000 volts instead. And so today we're making 150 kilowatt EV chargers, 1,000 volts, and it's scalable up to a megawatt. So when EV trucks become a thing and they need a charger that's a megawatt, we've got a scalable design that we can do that. We're 100% vertically integrated. We make all our own PC boards, bend our own sheet metal, mold our own parts. We do everything. So the biggest question in the charging space is, are you Buy America compliant? Our first design was over 80% domestic content. So we're kind of coming at it at a different angle than a lot of the other startups that are starting up in California where they're using imported Chinese or Asian components. We manufacture everything right here in Cleveland, Ohio. We already have all the software, all the networking, everything. So this was kind of I don't want to say it was a low investment opportunity, but we didn't really need to do anything different than the company was already doing. Just changed the design a little bit, and voila, we had a 150 kilowatt charger. So yeah, come see us. This is our technology and training center. We will have 450 kilowatt chargers sitting out in front of the building for free charging. So just swing by Lincoln, you can't miss it. We've got the largest onshore wind tower sitting outside the building, 2.5 megawatt wind tower. So you can't miss the Lincoln Electric Company if you're on Route 90. Swing off the highway and come charge, and we'll learn together. So, thanks.
Thank you, Roy. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the last person on the panel today is Laura Poutre, who is our senior editor at IndustryWeek, who covers most of the automotive manufacturing issues for us, so I thought she'd be a natural fit to bring onto the panel today. And Laura, why don't you kick it off as we get into questions here?
My first question's for Kareem. Congratulations on your new role, by the way.
Thank you.
So you started at Ultium in August, and you previously were at like several GM facilities. And could you talk a little bit about the transition going from like a metal stamping plant, like mainly mechanical and structural, to more of like a chemical manufacturing processes, and also maybe talk a little bit about the labor force too. Should we expect like a big shift in the labor force with you know, the transition from internal combustion engines to electric?
Okay. Well, I'll answer it by, let me start with what was the same. So
Yeah.
every day safety is a top priority that we have in the building. I will say that coming from, I've worked in vehicle propulsion and in stamping plants, they all have their own uniqueness in terms of what'll be the top safety issue. Like you mentioned before, we're in a plant that has chemicals now. So we're trying to benchmark the best of the best to see what practices we can bring inside the building, but safety is one that carries over no matter what. Second, for me personally, is engagement. So if the employees are engaged, we'll win the game. So we focus on making sure that our training is good and solid, and I'll talk a little bit about what the training looks like. It's a little bit different than what I'm traditionally used to. Another piece that's been a bit of a challenge and much different is in a lot of our other sites we have like equipment. Like our assembly plants will look the same. There'll be some subtle differences depending on product, but you go in here and we have OEMs that are delivering equipment. They're in some cases they're the expert, in some cases they're not. And each one of the pieces of equipment are not under like one integrator. So there's a little bit of challenge there when you're talking about HMI screens and training the workforce too. So to combat that, things that we've done, we have a simulator that LG brought on board, which is really, really good. It's not an exact replica of everything that's on the floor, but it gets employees really familiar with it. So when we look for employees, we don't have any set criteria you have to meet, but some things you'll walk into day one is obviously safety, and then there's a lot of focus on, you know, what are your basic computer skills because you're dealing with HMIs, and it's a bit different from like in assembly. There's a lot of cyclical work. So in about 2 weeks we can train employees. I would tell you in the jobs that we have here, it's not really cyclical. It's something different almost every day. So we have certain tasks that you're going to do every day, but anything can happen where you have to go in and make adjustments. So that's what we teach them to is how to make the offset. So it's a lot of on-the-job training. In some cases, people can learn the job in 3 weeks. In other cases, like our most complicated area is in our electrode area for coating. I would tell you it takes engineers a minimum 3 months just to get familiar with it. Operators probably closer to 4 to 6. So it's a journey there. So retaining talent is number one for us. We don't want to train people and then we lose the talent. So that's really been a focus. And again, on the safety aspect, that's been a bit different. So it's way different than stamping, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this next question is for you, Heather. When we think about mass deployment of any new technology, one of the first questions is, is it safe? When we're talking about just what Kareem is talking about here with the need for safety at the plant, when you're talking about disassembling those and dealing with these systems, what are some of the safety precautions you have to take? How do you have to look at the handling of one of these high-capacity EV batteries?
I can kind of echo what he was saying. Safety is our top priority at our facility too, because it can be dangerous. And so with our disassembly employees, they have FR-rated clothing, flame-resistant clothing. We have everything that they're wearing is to keep them safe. And then we also, in an event, we have flame-resistant, or not flame-resistant, but we have fire suppression systems in place, and training's a big factor. We're constantly training our employees on what to do because it's not if there's an event, it's when there's an event, unfortunately. It's just the nature of our business. And so training is very, very, very important as far as what to do during a situation at our facility. So we were, sorry.
Oh, when I think about a lot of EV batteries, I'm thinking proprietary technology. Do you run into any problems with not knowing what you're dealing with because an OEM might not share 100% of the specifications, or?
We work with the OEMs. We have a really good relationship with the OEMs, so we are lucky in that. But at the beginning, we didn't have that. So we are getting better with that, but the knowledge wasn't always there. So it's something we've struggled with in the past, but it's getting better.
This next question is for Scott and Steve. So between Eaton and Lincoln Electric, there's like 138 years of combined experience serving the automotive and manufacturing industries, and you guys have both jumped into the EV supply space, with Eaton creating its e-mobility division and Lincoln Electric getting into vehicle charging. What I'm wondering is, how did those decisions come about? And where did you see opportunities or discover concerns? Let's start with Scott.
Sure. So our company, like many, goes through a strategic planning process every year where we look 5 to 10 years out. And in the automotive and commercial vehicle spaces, regulations were a clear driver. You know, the market has seen fits and spurts of electrification in cars and trucks over many years, and probably, you know, everybody in this room knows some of that history. But this time it was different. And it was different because of CO2, more than a fuel economy, but actual CO2 as an emission, as well as some of the drivers in China, specifically where they were focused on more new energy vehicles, as they call them, plug-in hybrids and battery electric. So that's where it starts, looking forward and saying, and we said this time it was real, and it took us about a year to convince our senior leadership because of the history. We had gotten into EV chargers 10 years prior, and then everything dried up. We got into hybrid systems for medium-duty trucks, everything dried up. It was all incentive-driven. So it took a while to get everybody kind of to understand that this time it's different. And so that was kind of step one. And then step two was, okay, if we're going to participate, where to play? And so we looked at, you know, everything that's in an EV. We looked at then what do we have capabilities on, and kind of selected from that portfolio, if you will, and said we can add value. Eaton's a very value-driven company. You know, we don't want to just participate to participate. We want to participate where we can actually add value and help kind of advance things along. So those areas that I showed on my slide were very selective based on experience and capabilities that we have in the company. So we did that, and we, as I mentioned, we pulled everything together, formed a division, and it took off like a rocket, and we're still learning every day. This is a very young industry. So it's very dynamic. Steve?
Yeah. Sorry, I would kind of say the same a little bit. Same on our side. The engineering side was actually fairly straightforward. Yeah, just understanding what we were going to do. It was convincing our management that it was a good idea. And of course, when the government says, yeah, we're going to spend $5 billion building, you know, an EV charging grid, well, that's a pretty easy equation to understand. When the general the analyst view is that we need 1 million chargers in the United States over up to 2035, or whenever the OEMs say there's no more gas vehicles going to be manufactured. A third of those need to be these level 3 DC fast chargers to eliminate range anxiety, right? So 300,000 chargers needed around the US. They're roughly $100,000 each. So 300,000 times 100,000 is a big number. So once you got to that, then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, there might actually be a business case for it. And the engineering side, again, was fairly straightforward. But then, okay, now once you decided you're going to go, now how do you really understand the market? Do you really understand how to get there? Do you understand who the customers are? All of that, those are the natural questions.
And I might just point out, Steve, I noticed on your slide, there was a bullet that said these power levels are actually not that high. I can't remember.
Yeah.
We had the same discussion. Like in Eaton, we talk about trying to manage a 25,000 volt short circuit in an EV car, and that's like low power compared to what our electrical sector, and probably similar to what you experienced. So I actually had a situation where I was talking to someone about high voltage, like 400 volt in a car and in our electrical sector, and they were confused because that was low voltage for them. You know, so there is that. I think we
Yeah,
both
for
have
sure.
that pedigree.
We had
a
to
little
dumb our
bit.
product down to make a charger out of it. But still, it's interesting development.
Can you guys talk a little bit just about how EV partnerships work? Like who foots the bill between the OEMs and the suppliers, and who owns the intellectual property?
I can start with it. You know, it varies a little bit by customer, but in most cases, like how we would work, we would develop a core technology with our investment, our intellectual property, and then we may tailor it to a customer, like General Motors, let's say, one of the parents of Ultium. And so from an investment perspective, if we have a base product and they say, here's the application, then we're going to have to do some specific engineering work, maybe even have some specific tooling that's specific to their application. That would usually be part of the commercial discussion. Either they might pay a lump sum or it gets put into the piece price. But so I would say it's usually blended, but I mentioned at least for Eaton, we want to be value added. We've got to bring kind of the base technology to the customers, and then we work together depending on what they're looking for, and at some point what people are willing to pay for too.
Right.
The biggest challenge in the charging side of it is, despite the fact that there is an industry standard, there is no industry standard. Kareem wants, and GM would love to have the differentiating factor be the battery, right? Its capacity, how long it's going to last, all of that. That may lead you to develop specific technologies inside that you want to keep to yourself with good reason. The fact that affects the charging, because your battery is different than somebody else's, means that anytime you pull any car up to a charger, it may not work. 30% of all charging events today fail because the car and the charger won't talk to each other, despite the fact that there is an industry standard. And so that's really the biggest challenge, is interoperability. And so I think if you look at, there's a great McKinsey study, and there's a big round circle that says the biggest Wild West area is the charging side. The car side is fairly well known. The charging side is very unknown because of all these interoperability problems.
How close are you to solving that, interoperability problem? That seems like a big issue. Like people can't go up and charge their cars if they've.
Yeah. Well, if the OEMs would get together and actually make a standard, that would help. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So we will see. It falls to us to keep the inventory of cars that can be charged up to date. The best way to do that is have our chargers sitting out in front of the building and get as many cars to show up as possible. And then every time it doesn't work, we figure out, oh, why? Okay, now we fixed it. Now that one goes in the inventory. Yeah, I can charge that one. But we will see. Quite honestly, I think it's a bigger problem than most people realize.
Yeah, just along those lines, Laura had a really fantastic story a few days ago in IndustryWeek about Vitesco Technologies, the spin-off from Continental, and their people looking at how quickly the EV space was going to grow and how quickly their ICE space was going to shrink, and realizing that a lot of their early assumptions on how much time they had for ICE and how little time they had for EV, really having to change their investment strategies over a few years. It's really, if you have a chance, go to IndustryWeek.com. We'll plug there. Let's move on to the next question here. EV sales have been growing fairly steadily for the past 10 years, but we're still talking fairly small numbers for overall market penetration. Since the pandemic, most traditional vehicle sales have been flat to down with all the semiconductor problems, but EVs have held up and continue to grow. Just given that we have some lower costs vehicles coming out next year, the Chevy SUV that's looking at $30,000. How rapidly do you see the market developing over the next 2 years, the next 5 years? And we got 2030, 2035, where California and New York are now going to be banning ICE car sales. That's not that far away, really. Are we going to be ready? And Kareem, if we could start with you on that.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier, General Motors, our customer, their goal is to have 1 million EVs out by 2025. Really want to be carbon neutral by 2040. And if they can by 2035, all light duty models basically having no tailpipe emissions. So it's an aggressive target, but as you see from, I can't really speak to all of the commercials and things that come out, but there are new vehicles that are coming out at different price points. So there's 3 big things we try to focus on that we have influence over. So it's safety, making sure that the batteries that we do have, well, it sounds like I might need 4, but going back to figure out a standard. But the 3 are really safety and making sure that the customer feels comfortable in an EV, whether it's charging, safe ways to do that. The second piece I'd say is probably range anxiety, where a lot of folks are interested in, hey, can I get past 300, 400, 500, X amount of miles so I can do my cross-country voyages. And the charging infrastructure is huge on that, and making sure that they can charge there. And then the last point is the price point. So the vehicles can't be priced so high. Now we do have some higher ones, like Celestiq is pretty high. Your Hummer is pretty high, but then they just announced again the vehicle you were referencing, it was the Equinox that's coming in at a lower price point. So at Ultium, our piece, we focus a lot on continuous improvement, manufacturing initiatives. That's one of the things that General Motors does bring to the table in the partnership. And it's really focused around lowering our cost of our batteries and making sure we're able to meet that. So as we are able to drive costs out, that should lower the cost of the actual battery cell. Right now, the battery cell makes up about 80 to 90% of the actual res battery pack, which is basically where all the modules are. So if we can reduce that cost, that significantly lowers the cost of the battery, which should help to break those price points for customers. And then on the LG side, they have focused a lot on the chemistry portion of it. So one beautiful thing about the battery cell packs that we have is we can change the chemistry. We don't have to go and redesign all of our battery packs at the facility. So as new chemistries come out, they're able to get more range out of them. Right now, the chemistry we're using right now has less cobalt in it. So there's different, and it's advancing very, very fast. So if they have different chemistries that get the range and we're able to reduce the cost out, you'll see a lot more EVs probably on the road. It's been a space that I know most of the car manufacturers have gotten into, is one that Tesla dominated for quite some time. And now they're getting a lot of competition, so I think people see that that's where we're driving to. And they're starting to get more on range, starting to get, making sure that you have the safe, vehicles are safer for people, where they feel comfortable driving them, and then hitting the price point, I think are the big keys.
I'm sorry, we'll be going to a Q&A toward the end of the session, so if you have any questions, please hold them for a little while.
Okay.
Did anyone else have some, want to talk about the kind of predictions? How soon are we going to be ready for this drive towards electrification?
I was going to say battery recycling is a huge thing for the industry. We don't have the lithium available right now to meet the need in 2030, so we have to times it by 3, I believe, to get to that point. And so battery recycling, cathode recycling, that kind of thing is essential. Keeping, it helps with not having the mines and everything, like mining, having to mine it, having to go out, the environmental impact of it as well. So I think that's a major factor that we really need to look at as an industry, as far as, because it's not there yet. We're not there yet.
Yeah, one thing I would just point out is that the IIJA, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, put, again, $5 billion just for the charging infrastructure. So that was for 60,000 miles of alternative fuel corridor, which is around the United States, to put one charging station, which is 4 chargers, every 50 miles, okay? So 60,000 miles with a charger station every 50 miles along those 60,000 miles. The act calls to complete that within 5 years. The biggest issue is not so much the hardware like we would make, it's a massive construction problem. If you figure that every one of those charging locations is roughly the equivalent of 60 homes worth of power, okay? So the utility side of it is again the bigger problem. How do you put the equivalent of 60 homes worth of power in a parking lot, okay, every 50 miles? So the construction effort is massive, the civil construction. And I think that will be the bigger challenge of how fast this all gets completed over the next 5 years. What's what the government funding calls for.
Talking about the carbon footprint, Heather, you talked a little bit about the carbon footprint of creating batteries, and you know, whether the recycling. Can you talk a little more about whether recycling materials can lessen manufacturing's impact, like how much of a effect that it can have on you know, companies' carbon footprints?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as far as the recycling part of it, I mean, you're not going in mining, you're not, you know, all that involves, and as far as, you know, safety and everything, I think we're going to see a huge uptick in well, I have already, like lithium companies, recycling companies, even in Ohio. I think that I mean, a lot of it's zero waste, zero emissions, zero, so it's a really an environmentally friendly way to do our recycling, the way I've seen it anyway, and the companies I've audited and places I've gone. It's very good for the environment.
And maybe the rest of the panel, can anyone talk about like the solutions on the horizon to address material needs in the EV space?
I'll just maybe add a comment, not just recycling, but reuse, repurpose. So I mentioned our uninterruptible power supply systems, and we've worked with Nissan and reused, repurposed EV batteries for UPS systems. Like there's a sports arena in Amsterdam. That was kind of our flagship project. And it was a blend. There were some new batteries and there were some repurposed batteries. But there are those sorts of opportunities too, where the second use of the battery doesn't necessarily have some of the same requirements and expectations as the vehicle. And I think there are other examples, maybe others even from this panel. So there's that opportunity as well, and I'll just add that to the conversation.
I was in an interesting discussion at the Center for Automotive Research at Ohio State University. One of the projects is to take used EV batteries and just rack them up. So rather than recycle them, they're just going to rack them up and then put them back on the grid. So you know, stack all these batteries together, and if you can get whatever 3, 4, 5 megawatts of energy sitting there, and then you use a DC to AC converter and just put it back on the grid for peak shaving or those types of things. That's another way to potentially repurpose you know, the EV battery packs.
And you know, building on that point too, if you think about if we're on the Ohio Turnpike and you stop to charge your car and it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, everybody's going to be doing that. The grid can't supply that much energy at once, so you need to have energy storage to be able to do that DC fast charging. Again, the peak shaving, you know, fill it up at night and pour it out during the day. So those things are definitely part of the equation.
They had that issue in Florida, didn't they, during the hurricane?
Yeah.
People had to wait forever for the charging stations.
Yep. There's an equally interesting business case for school buses. So part of the charging infrastructure is what's called fleet charging. So you've got a municipality that's got whatever, 50 school buses. The school buses drop the kiddos off at 8 o'clock in the morning and pick them up at 2:30, and then the bus just sits there. They're big batteries. All those buses sitting in a parking lot stored up could be a tremendous amount of energy that the municipality uses back again at those peak times when everybody turns their air conditioner on at 4 o'clock in the evening or something. So I think there's whole business models that will get created by using these resources in new and different ways.
Yeah, we've seen with the grid in California during the heat wave a few weeks ago, there were people were being discouraged from charging their electric vehicles because there wasn't enough capacity on the grid. But at the same time, if there are enough electric vehicles that it can feed back into the grid, that could be a solution to the problem then instead of part of the challenge. So
Agreed.
lots of developments to come there, it sounds like. Let's move on to the next one here. Steve, you've talked a couple times about the Inflation Reduction Act and the investments it has towards charging stations. A couple of questions there. Is it enough money if you're talking about this massive civil engineering challenge? for the utilities, and how great is the need for infrastructure spending for the charging stations and other pieces?
Yeah. Well, the IIJA, which is just specific for the vehicle charging to eliminate range anxiety, is only $5 billion. If you look at all the federally funded projects that are on the docket, have been funded, it's $55 billion. And that is to convert municipal buses, to convert school buses, to convert, not just cars, but anything that goes over the road, if you will. Then create the charging side of it and what's called microgrids. These grids where you're utilizing the battery and putting it back on the grid. So you've got this bi-directional type of flow. So there's a lot of money out there. I don't think the money is the problem. It's really the expertise and the manufacturing and the construction of all of that it would take to significantly change the utilization of fossil fuels. That's not going to happen for, well, a decade or two.
So is this ICE-T all over again? We're rebuilding the road system in a certain way?
I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know.
This next question's for Scott. A few years ago, when I talked to tier 2s or tier 3s in automotive, there was a lot of existential dread about the shift to electric. EVs have orders of magnitude fewer moving parts than internal combustion vehicles. So there's fewer parts to stamp, machine, weld, and coat. Given Eaton's wide range of mechanical and fuel system products, is this a crisis for traditional suppliers? And will you be able to create enough products and opportunities on the e-mobility side to make up for the ICE declines?
Yeah, it definitely depends on each supplier and their profile, and you're right. Eaton, I didn't talk about it, but Eaton is very exposed to internal combustion engines, and we have parts that go into fuel tanks and so forth, valves and things like that. So there is a risk to a portion of our business, but one thing I'd say is it's not a cliff event. Sometimes people think about EVs and ICE or internal combustion engines as kind of binary, and it's not. They're going to coexist probably forever, regardless of what is said in some countries and states and so forth, because certain applications are just better with fuel. With that said, we do see risk. And so we are very deliberate with our capital investment and our engineering investments. We have like a ABC or red, green, yellow in terms of that's a red, like we're not going to put any more capital in, we're not going to develop new product. But then we have other products that still apply to a battery electric vehicle. And then on my side of the equation, on the e-mobility side, it's a massive growth opportunity. And for those who are in the industry, as a supplier, a lot of times you talk about a content per vehicle. Like how much content could you have on a vehicle? $100 per vehicle, $1,000 per vehicle. We actually have more content opportunity per vehicle than we do with our legacy or traditional products. So the net effect for us is upside and growth and just being able to handle it because the market is it's intense right now, I'll say the least.
Do you see the tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers like making a shift, or a lot of them, are they just going to be obsolete?
I think we're going to see a spectrum. There are going to be some that drop like flies, that can, not just because of EVs, but the whole environment that we're dealing with now with inflationary pressures and so forth, and we're already seeing it. A lot of suppliers run very lean, somewhat driven by the customers, and those who don't manage themselves, to be able to handle a downturn, they'll be gone because we see it every cycle in automotive. Others, I think I'll put Eaton on that list. We're very fiscally responsible and we're pretty selective on what we do and don't do.
Well, I've got to say, I'm shocked to hear there are people in the automotive industry who think that the suppliers are put upon in any way.
I was polite about that one.
Well, we're going to get to the Q&A here in just a second, but before we do, just one simple question to everyone. We're going to start with you, Scott, and work our way down the panel. What do you find most exciting right now about this space?
It's the growth rate. I mean, and our market's kind of a 2 to 3% growth, and I would say it was kind of diminishing returns. You know, I mentioned we do stuff on engines. It was like incremental, just get the next, 100th of a percent fuel economy improvement out, and kind of static. And in the EV space, we're talking growth rates 30, 40, 50%, 100%. It's a hyper growth market to be in right now in the EV portion of the market. So it's exciting. Like if you're interested in being in a high growth market, get into the EV space and cars and trucks, and because it's, get ready, hold on. So I like that. It's fun. A lot more fun than it used to be.
Kareem?
All right, so I echo the same thing. On top of that, like I mentioned earlier, it's very ambiguous. If you like to solve problems, I think you heard that there's a lot of problems out there to solve, but there's light on the horizon. A lot of people moving toward it. It's just an exciting place to be. Personally, working at the Ultium plant in Ohio, it's like we're the tip of the spear. So we're the first joint venture we've had between GM and LG, and looking forward to seeing us progress to get our sales out, get the cost down, get the range anxiety lowered. And I think you'll see a change from folks going into maybe there's an EV and an ICE vehicle in a household to hopefully 2 EVs or whatever that household wants. But it's an exciting time to be there. There's a lot of products coming out. You're seeing a lot of innovation from every company, whether they're tier 1 or OEMs. It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
I would say similar, but I'm at the end of it. And it's exciting to see, just in the 8 years that I've been in the industry, how different the batteries have been, how it shifted from one chemistry to another, the EV batteries, just the whole process has been really cool. But the uptick recently has been unreal. Yeah, we've seen all kinds of new vehicles, because we work with the OEMs, so we get to see them usually before others. So that part's pretty cool, pretty exciting. And just to see the growth in the recycling end of it.
I would say the growth rate, and then the opportunity to bring something home. I mean, a lot in the charging side, a lot of it is imported products. So the ability to manufacture it here in the USA, I think that's a big upside for the country.